food, drugs, or ideas, what you consume influences who you become. On the Mind and Matter podcast, we learn together from the best scientists and thinkers alive today about how your mind-body reacts to what you feed it. Before starting Mind and Matter, I spent 10 years in academia doing scientific research. I got a PhD in neuroscience where I focused on neuroendocrinology and the neurobiology of behavior, and before that, I specialized in molecular, developmental, and evolutionary genetics. I use my scientific background to help parse and translate the information that guests share on the podcast. In addition to the podcast, I write long-form written content inspired by the show where I integrate what I've learned across episodes. I also have a free weekly newsletter where I provide you with upcoming guests, share links, and provide commentary on scientific studies and research that I'm reading, and more. Visit mindandmatter.substack.com to find all of my content. A little bit about yourself. What's your background and what's your career been like?
I'm a lecturer. I became a lecturer for many years ago, and I have worked on many various clinics. And in the 60s, I started on the renal clinic in Lund, Sweden, and I worked there for several years. But they kicked me because I have organized a research group, and one of the members tried to become a medical, what is called PhD. Mm-hmm. And in his work, I observed that he has lied. He wrote that he has analyzed more than 20 studies, but I could only find 6 of them. And therefore I informed the professor about this. But he wouldn't listen to me. He thought I was wrong. And half a year later, the professor on the renal clinic in Lund, she was a previous, what is called, she had loved the professor in Malmö, and she was very aggressive against me. And she found a few small errors in one of my papers, and she said that if I do not leave the clinic, I am not allowed to continue my research. And I would go down to, I was assistant professor, but she said, if you do not leave the clinic, you are degraded to what is called a normal doctor, not assistant professor. So I left the clinic and started my own clinic, but I continued to research about that. What I researched at the time was cholesterol. And today I have published more than 200 papers and comments about cholesterol. And I have found that the cholesterol myth is wrong. High cholesterol is not a bad finding. High cholesterol is beneficial because it participates in the immune system by adhering to all kinds of microorganisms and their toxic products.
So cholesterol has a function in the immune system, which most people don't appreciate.
Yes. Very few are aware of that.
And so you've been in Sweden this whole time, your whole career?
That's what do you say?
You've been in Sweden the whole time.
Yes. Well, I am Danish, but I moved to Sweden in the 60s.
I see. And
So
so
I have lived here all my life.
and
The
are
rest
you
of my life.
I see. So you've been a cholesterol researcher this whole time. And just so people
Yeah.
know, do you have an MD, PhD, you have a medical degree and a doctorate?
Oh, yes.
And so you've been researching this area for decades. And you started off, you told us a story about how you were working with a PhD student who's doing some research and you found some anomalies in that research. Was that to do with cholesterol?
I don't understand your question.
So when you told us that story of the PhD student who lied.
Yeah.
What was the topic of that paper?
Oh, it was about glomerulonephritis,
I see. So kidney stuff.
kidney failure. Yeah.
How did
Kidney
you
disease.
how did you get into cholesterol research? How did that begin?
It began in the 80s when the cholesterol campaign started in Sweden.
Mm.
And I couldn't remember any proof that high cholesterol was bad. So I therefore started to study the science, all papers about cholesterol. Mm-hmm. And very soon I found that there are just as many lies about that than the PhD had found about glomerulonephritis. For instance, just a moment.
Yeah.
I found that Ansel Keys, he was the one who started it, I think. Mm-hmm. And he claimed that saturated fat was dangerous. And I studied all papers about saturated fat, and I couldn't find any proof for that. And I think that most researchers have agreed with that. Saturated fat is not bad.
So basically, when Ansel Keys started promoting his idea that saturated fat and cholesterol were causing heart disease, when that was starting to become more common and prominent in Sweden in the 1980s, you went back and you read all of the old literature on this, and you found that the arguments for this were not very strong.
No, Ansel Keys had lied. He has in his reviews, he has included many studies that showed the opposite.
So in a review paper written by him or by others, they'll include studies and say, the studies say X, Y, and Z, but then if you go actually look at the studies they cite, they do not, in fact, say that. Mm-hmm. And you have, you have some papers I've read, and you've documented this type of thing a number of times where you go to the literature, you read a review paper in a big journal written by famous scientists sometimes, and it says, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. But then if you actually go and check the citations, often it doesn't say that at all, or it's completely contradictory, or it's exaggerated.
Precisely.
And so what do you think is going on there?
Well, I think that this is the greatest criminal action in medical science, to claim that high cholesterol is dangerous. And I think that this claim is supported, I don't think it is supported by many drug companies, because they have earned millions of dollars on the cholesterol-lowering drugs.
So you're talking about statins here primarily.
Yes.
So let's give people an idea for LDL cholesterol. So this is what they call bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol. But what is LDL cholesterol? Let's explain that for people.
LDL is used in the immune system. LDL Well, it is attached to all kinds of bacteria and microorganisms.
So it literally sticks to bacteria. It sticks to bacteria.
Yes.
Yes.
And when they have done that, the bacteria and covered with LDL, they are attached to each other and taken up by the monocytes. And monocytes, they inactivate all microorganisms by oxidation. So oxidized LDL is a common finding in patients with myocardial function. And today, most researchers think that it is oxidized LDL, which is dangerous, but it is not. Oxidized LDL is the result of the immune system.
So you're saying that when someone gets an infection, or at least certain types of infections, LDL particles can actually stick to bacteria and cause them to all kind of clump together. And then the LDL is oxidized, and then monocytes, immune cells, see that and then get rid of the clump of bacteria, basically.
Yeah. And if there are too much, they are added to each other and may occlude the arterioles, in particular the arterioles around the heart, because here the interstitial pressure is much higher than elsewhere.
So you're saying if you have an infection, what can happen is the LDL particles cause all these bacteria to stick together and clump up. Then you get oxidized LDL. And if there's too many of them, so if you have a really bad infection and you get a huge mass of these clumped together, that is what could clog an artery.
Yeah.
So if this is true and this has been observed, and LDL has a function in the immune system and it helps the immune system find bacteria and kind of clump them together, what would we expect to see? So for example, if you had healthy individuals and one person had low LDL, would they be more susceptible to infection?
Oh, yes. Many studies have also shown that those with low LDL have a greater risk of coronary heart disease. I would add that the proof that LDL participate in the immune system, it has been documented in many, many studies, in particular in animal studies. Some researchers have infected the animals with microorganisms which kill them. But if they also include or inject human LDL, they survive.
So if you inject an animal with microorganisms and they have low LDL, they're more likely to get sick and potentially die. But if you inject microorganisms with LDL, that does not happen.
Yes.
Wow. And that's been that. So that people have seen that many times. This is not theoretical.
No, very few know anything about that. And very few also know that the risk of infection was demonstrated already for a century ago by American researchers. They found that patients who had suffered from a severe infection, they were more atherosclerotic than other people.
People who had severe infections had worse atherosclerosis.
People who suffer or die from infectious diseases, they were more atherosclerotic than healthy people.
So atherosclerosis has something to do with these infections.
Yes. This was demonstrated for about 100 years ago.
So you're saying we've got a lot of studies pointing to this role that LDL plays in the immune system function. There's a tie-in here to atherosclerosis, but for all of my life, until just until I started reading your work recently, I never heard anything about this. How come more people don't know about this?
I think the reason is that many or almost all cardiological professors, they are well paid by the drug industry. They do not dare to mentioned this fact.
And so statins are very widely prescribed today. They're supposed to make your so-called bad cholesterol, LDL, go down. That's what they do. But they cause a lot of problems. In fact, just today, I saw a new study coming out saying that statins make insulin resistance worse and interfere with other things. They're known to be at least mild mitochondrial toxins in different ways, but nobody really talks about this very much. And then this whole area that you're talking about, people almost never talk about, which is this immune system tie-in. So but because statins are so widely prescribed and so widely used, and because they lower LDL cholesterol, would that mean that people who are on statins compared to people who are not on statins are at higher risk for infection?
Oh, yes. And what has been shown, what we have shown also, we have performed a meta-analysis of all statin-lowering trials. And what we found, there were many more trials than the believers have found. We found, I think, about 36 trials. And the result was that only one or two of these trials have lowered the risk, the mortality risk from myocardial infarction by more than 1%. And several of them have increased the risk of mortality.
So you're saying, basically what you're saying, from what you're telling me and what I've read from yours, is there's a bunch of studies out there, a bunch of trials that look at statins and heart disease and all of this stuff. And if you look at all the studies, some of them might show that statins help a little bit, but some of them actually show the opposite. And if you look at all of them, you get one picture, but then there's other papers out there by other scientists, and there are meta-analysis and reviews, and they look at only some of the studies. They pick out only some of the studies that show a positive result, and they ignore other studies. And you're saying that when you look at everything, it paints a very different picture than if you cherry pick just a few studies from the literature.
Yes, we found that more than 10 trials were not mentioned in the usual meta-analyses.
So there are meta-analyses out there that claim to show that statins are good at helping people with heart disease, basically.
Yes.
But they only look at a small number of the studies out there.
Their arguments are also falsified because they use to demonstrate the relative risk of the high cholesterol. The relative risk is not the same as absolute risk.
Yes. Let's talk about that. What is the difference there? Yeah.
Say that we have an experiment, cholesterol-lowering experiment, with 100 of them receive a cholesterol-lowering drug and another 100 do not.
I see. So you got 200 people, 100 will get, say, a statin, and 100 will get a placebo, and you're going to compare the two.
Yes. And if the result, perhaps 2 died in the non-treated group and only 1 in the treated group.
So 2 people die in the placebo group, 1 person dies in the statin group.
Yes. Then the absolute risk reduction is 1%.
Which is tiny and it's not significant.
No.
Right.
But the drug paid researchers, they claim that the reduction is about 30 to 40%. And if this is the relative risk is in the experiment I tried to explain, where there was 1 in the treatment group and 2 in the control group. The relative risk is 50%.
Right. Yeah. So if you did that experiment, 100 people with a statin, 100 people with a placebo, 1 person in the statin group dies, 2 people in the placebo dies. That's just a difference of 1 person, and that's clearly not significant. But because 1 is half of 2, that's a 50% relative risk benefit, quote unquote. Yeah. And by reporting the relative risk instead of the absolute risk, it makes a trivial result look like an amazing result. Yes. It's basically a way of reporting results that greatly exaggerates the effect. It's actually, we saw that a lot with COVID too. When the mRNA vaccines came out, they were reporting relative risk and claiming, 100% efficacy, which just meant Yeah, which meant a tiny improvement in absolute risk.
I didn't understand what you said just now.
I was just explaining for people that are going to listen that there's a variety of contexts in which the relative risk is reported to make something look like a big effect when in fact it's a tiny effect.
Yes.
Okay, so people have selectively cited the literature on statins. They have not necessarily looked at all the studies. They can look at just a subset of studies that can bias what gets reported in the literature. And also, the way the trials are done and reported on in meta-analyses, they are often looking at relative risk instead of absolute risk. And what you just explained for us is why that is inappropriate and why that paints a picture that's not really true.
Yeah.
And so do you think that people that report results like this and cherry pick from the literature and use these metrics, are they just sloppy researchers who don't know what they're doing, or do they know what they're doing?
I am afraid they do know it, because it's very, very easy to understand. But as I mentioned, many professors in cardiology, they are paid by the drug industry, and the drug industry has a great income. They pay very much to those who support them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically people are being paid to report results a certain way.
Yeah. And they also know if they go against the drug companies, they will be unable to publish anything, because the drug industry has paid many medical journals also. Mm-hmm. The medical journals earn much money from the drug companies. So it's very difficult to publish a critical paper. Yeah. I have succeeded, but many of my papers have been rejected because, well, without reasons.
So you've received a lot of pushback in different ways, I imagine. Your studies or your review papers don't get published in certain journals. What other things have you experienced as a researcher, given the heretical views on cholesterol that you've articulated with others?
They don't react. I have protested against the reaction of my papers and sent letters to them or to those who they use as anti-argument, but without any response.
One of the things, so I read one of your review papers, which I'll link people to because it was very interesting. And I noticed, you have been researching in Sweden, and there's a lot of Swedish authors on this paper. There's some authors from Japan. And when I look at the literature on atherosclerosis and statins and cholesterol and all of that, there's different researchers all over the world. What I tend to notice is the researchers that you work with in places like Sweden and Japan, they will publish papers that are critical of the lipid hypothesis that, cholesterol is bad for heart disease. And usually there's no conflicts of interest reported. They don't report any financial entanglements with drug companies. But when I look at the papers published that are basically in favor of statins, they're often by researchers in the US and Europe. And in those papers, the conflict of interest section is usually very, very, very long. There's financial entanglements. Is that a real pattern? Am I noticing something real there?
Yes. Well, in fact, I have published many papers together with researchers from many countries. And I have also organized a group called THINKS, the International, people who are skeptical against the cholesterol hypothesis. Mm-hmm. So we are about 20 or 25 members.
And
what I have shown together with some of them is also that those who have high cholesterol, elderly people with high cholesterol, they live longer than other people.
So if you just look at elderly people above roughly the age of 60.
Yes, but is the reason why it is not valuable among young people is that what is called there is an inborn phenomenon where people are born with high cholesterol.
You mean FH, familial hypercholesterolemia?
Familial hypercholesterolemia. And in this, among those, there are many young people with this abnormality who die early from heart disease. But the reason is not their high cholesterol. The reason is they have also inherited high levels of coagulation factors.
High levels of coagulation factors get co-inherited with FH.
Yes.
And so,
but recently there was a paper published about familial hypercholesterolemia. They had analyzed almost 4 million people. No, excuse me. They have analyzed almost 4 million people with acute myocardial infarction. And among them, there was, of course, people with familial hypercholesterolemia. Mm-hmm. But there's another study studying where the authors have studied the prevalence of familial hypercholesterolemia, and they found that in the whole world there are about 0.3% who are born with this disease. But in the paper I mentioned, where they have studied more than 3 million patients with acute myocardial infarction, there was only 0.06% who had familial hypercholesterolemia. There should have been many, many more.
Right.
There are in the general population the number.
If high cholesterol was the reason for the death, you would have expected to see more.
Yeah. In the general population, the number of people with familial hypercholesterolemia is 5 to 6 times higher than this review of more than 3 million patients with myocardial infarction.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what you're saying is, a small subset of people are born with a genetic condition called familial hypercholesterolemia, which gives them very high LDL cholesterol levels.
Yep.
If it was true that LDL cholesterol drives heart disease, then we should basically see that whole population dying at an early age. But there's a twist here. The average age of death...
Just the opposite.
Yeah. So you're saying that so there are people with FH that die early, but you're saying it's not because of the cholesterol per se. It's because some subset of FH patients also inherit other coagulation factors in their blood that cause things to clump together, and an infection, for the reasons we discussed earlier, makes that worse, and they die for that reason. But of all the other people with FH, they don't die earlier.
No.
So basically, there's a subset of people with FH that die early, but then those that do not die early, they still have very, very high cholesterol.
Oh yes,
but they're not dying early of cardiovascular disease.
And those who die, their cholesterol is not higher than the other who survive.
I see. So if you compare the people with FH that die early to those who live into older age, there's no difference in their cholesterol levels.
No.
So if it was cholesterol...
There's only difference in the coagulation system.
I see. So a subset of people get FH, and they're unlucky. They also get these other coagulation factors they inherit, and that's what's killing them, not the LDL cholesterol being high itself.
Yeah. But it's very few number.
And so that has misled people, because they think, okay, the average death rate of everyone with FH is a younger age, but it's not because everyone's got an earlier death. It's because only a subset of the patients with FH have this other inherited thing that's also wrong.
Yes. Correct.
Wow. So there's people with FH who have cholesterol levels that are very, very high, 600, 700, 800 or more, but they live to be elderly.
They should be happy.
Yeah.
Because it's beneficial to have high cholesterol. You are
Well, based on what you said earlier, does that mean they have a lower risk of infection?
They have lower risk on infection. They have also a lower risk of cancer.
Really?
Yeah.
Lower risk of cancer if you have genetically high cholesterol levels.
Yes.
And is that well established?
Yes. Well, I have found the evidence, but very few know about it.
And so, why do few people know about it? Is it because it's hard for you to publish your papers in the big journals and of the things that we talked about earlier?
Yes. Well, about 20 years ago, I have published many cholesterol critic papers in the major journals, but it suddenly became very difficult. And I think it is because the drug industry realized that my information was very expensive for them. They would lose lots of money if I was able to spread this information. I already, for more than 25 years, I published a paper showing that no study has no studies have shown that high cholesterol was dangerous.
One of the things that you talk about in your review is that in about the year 2004, 2005, there were some new clinical trial regulations that came out, and it changed how clinical studies and the data were reported. Before those regulations, the underlying data for the clinical trials, I don't think was available. And after that, it had to be made available to some extent. And so this changed the types of results people started to see reported in the clinical literature around statins. Can you talk a little bit about what happened at that time and what that tells us about these trials?
I don't know. Well, I think that that there are many trials where there is no information about economic support. So I think that's the reason why most researchers still believe in the danger of high cholesterol. Mm-hmm. But there are many researchers who have observed that. If you go to the YouTube and use the search word cholesterol or cholesterol myth, you will get many people or many information about that is wrong, that high cholesterol is beneficial. It is not dangerous.
So I want to go back to the immune system connection and make sure I understand it. Basically, you're saying LDL particles. So LDL particles are synthesized in the liver. They can go up, they can go down. Different foods, different medications can make someone's LDL levels go up or down. There are genetic conditions, like we talked about, FH, where people can have higher cholesterol. So there's variability in cholesterol levels between people for genetic reasons. There's variability in response to the drugs you're taking and the diet you're taking, so that the liver can, move LDL levels up or down as needed. Why does it do that? Is it primarily about infections and immune system function, or are there other reasons why the liver would increase or decrease LDL levels?
Well, this is a difficult question. One of the reasons is, one of the facts is that mental stress is able to raise LDL cholesterol very much. It may, in a short time, it stops as the patient's normal or the individual's normal cholesterol. So if you become stressed, the cholesterol goes up. And I think this is also the reason why many researchers have associated high cholesterol with heart disease.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In one of your papers, you write about this. You say mental stress is able to raise cholesterol by 10 to 50% in just a half hour.
Yeah.
So it can cause it to go up very quickly.
Yeah.
And so, so finish the thought there.
And it is Well, it is seen as a proof that that LDL is the cause, but it's not the cause. It's an effect of heart disease.
Yeah, so that's this. You're saying this is a classic correlation versus causation fallacy.
Mm.
And so what do we think is going on biologically there? Like, why is the cholesterol going up in response to stress?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. But you're saying it can't be causing it because we've got many examples where the cholesterol's high,
Yes.
and then you don't get heart disease.
Oh, yes. High stress is also elevating the blood pressure.
Mm.
So it's very difficult to analyze patients on acute medical division because many patients are stressed. So their cholesterol may be higher than normal, and their blood pressure may be higher than normal. And the interpretation of this finding, it's high blood pressure, high cholesterol that is dangerous.
I see, but these are symptoms of some underlying cause, but the default in most of the research world is to interpret those endpoints as the problem and then to create drugs to treat the problem. So that's why we have statins to lower cholesterol levels. That's why we have blood pressure medication. But to the extent those aren't the actual cause, those are just symptoms of the cause, then suppressing those symptoms might not work at all or even be dangerous.
Correct. There are much research showing that high cholesterol is not, high blood pressure is not as dangerous as we have been learned. But it's impossible to tell this fact in the medical journals. Everybody knows that high blood pressure is dangerous. But the fact is that old people, they have high cholesterol high blood pressure, because the arteries, all of our arteries become atherosclerotic. Most people, all people. And the arteries become more, what is called small, the lumen becomes much smaller to the brain. So the brain needs higher blood pressure to function normally.
Right. So the high blood pressure, it's actually a compensatory change because it's harder to push fluid through the tubes. You need more pressure to get it through.
Yeah. But I have published about that for many decades ago, but I stopped because I realized that if I claim that both high cholesterol and high blood pressure is beneficial, nobody will believe what I am writing. They will think that I'm an idiot. So everybody knows that high cholesterol and high blood pressure is dangerous.
Yeah. One thing that's often surprising to people is if you look at the mortality curves, so the risk of mortality across age groups for cholesterol levels, you see increased mortality when cholesterol is too high to some extent, but also too low. And actually, it's often steeper on the low side, meaning that oftentimes too low cholesterol is even more of a risk for mortality than too high cholesterol. But what's interesting is those curves do not align with what doctors often prescribe people statins for cholesterol. Very often, the lowest mortality is seen at a level of cholesterol that's considered too high, which doesn't make any sense.
No. The fact is that the risk is higher with a low cholesterol.
Yeah. And that becomes more true at older ages.
We have analyzed many studies where the researchers have followed old people for several years, measuring their cholesterol. And who live the longest? Those with high cholesterol.
Yeah, yeah. I've read about this. Yeah, so people in the older age brackets, what we would call senior
Oh,
citizens, they're
oh,
they live longer in
yeah,
association with how high their cholesterol is.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's just but then like like my grandparents, like I've seen this happen in my personal life. They will be told by the doctor you have to get on a statin because your cholesterol is getting too high, and it's probably not even high enough based on the mortality data I've seen.
What do you say? It is high in
Oh,
there.
I'm saying I know people who are elderly, and the doctor wants to put them on a statin because the doctor says their cholesterol is too high, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's at a
Oh,
level that's associated with lower mortality. Um, how old are you, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm 90 years.
So you're nine now. You're 90.
90, what's it called? 19 years.
Yeah,
I'm talking Swedish now. I'm 19 now. Not
90.
90.
Yeah.
90 years old.
So
Yeah.
do you know what your cholesterol levels are at?
Oh, yes, it's high.
What is it?
Well, it's several years since I measured it. It was above the normal.
Yeah, yeah. For your age.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
no, not for my age, but for the general population.
Mm. And so you've never taken a statin or anything?
Oh, no.
What would be, are there any risks to taking statins? I mean, that's implied by what you're saying, but what would be the
Yes,
risks?
that's a sad fact that statin treatment has many serious side effects. The most common is muscular problems. The
Yeah.
muscles became weaker and painful. The brain may suffer from many different failures, and the infections are more often seen among patients treated with statins,
Yeah.
and there are many more side effects.
Yeah, but those are common.
Cataract,
Those are common ones, like muscle problems. It causes basically muscle atrophy.
yeah. The problem is that the most of these side effects, they do not occur immediately.
Right. It's
It
a slow,
takes,
it's a slow, sort of slow,
yes,
mild effect.
it's slow, and therefore most research, they think that these side effects are result from age.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
become older, you will get weaker muscles, of course.
Yeah. So basically,
But
the side effects that statins tend to have are similar to those we tend to see get progressively worse with age. And therefore,
yeah,
when people are on statins, A, they don't get statins until they get into middle age usually. And B, they're on statins for many years. And so you're saying that people are mistaking the effects of statins for age related decline.
but there are several studies having shown that those with these side effects, they became healthy when they stopped the statin treatment.
Wow. So you can just stop and then you won't have that
Yes,
problem.
if they stop statin treatment, the side effects disappear. It takes some weeks or a month or so, but they disappear. There are, for instance, there is a study about the what's called those who participate in. Though I can't find the correct word. We'll talk about another thing.
Okay. So like if we step back for a minute, you've spent, decades studying this stuff and you've been publishing results that go against what a lot of the mainstream says, for the reasons we discussed. There's a lot of entanglements here between the drug companies and the field of cardiology and the research that goes on. What motivated you to keep working on this stuff this whole time?
Well, I was well when I realized that high cholesterol was beneficial, I couldn't do anything else than try to tell people about it. I mean, millions or hundreds of millions of people are suffering from side effects. And I'm a physician. I think this is a very serious problem.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone, in your opinion, as a physician, like, is there anyone who needs to be on a statin?
Anyone who
should be on a statin drug?
No. Statin drugs are not beneficial. They are able to start many diseases.
Wow. So you wouldn't recommend statins even for someone with familial hypercholesterolemia?
Oh yes, stop statin treatment immediately. Because, as I told you, it's a benefit to be born with high cholesterol.
So yeah, that's what we talked about earlier. So people with FH.
The study that included almost 4 million myocardial infarcts, the number of patients with familial hypercholesterolemia was 5 to 6 times lower than in the general population.
Right.
So it must be a benefit to have familial hypercholesterolemia.
So you're saying people have been fooled by the fact that a subset of FH patients also inherit those coagulation factors, and that's what renders that subset of them to an early death.
A small subset of them, they die earlier.
Yeah. So if you just average the entire population of FH patients, it looks like they die earlier, but it's because a subset of them dies earlier, not because everyone dies earlier. And that has misled us.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, it was so interesting. I also read, when I was reading some of your work and some of the literature on FH, it was pointed out to me that if you look at FH patients from over 100 years ago, they actually did not die at higher rates, before the industrial era.
No, there is a study from I think it's about 1980. They found that people with familial hypercholesterolemia, they live longer than other people.
Yeah. No, I saw that too. Yeah, they actually can live longer.
Mm-hmm.
And so what?
And their mortality, their infection diseases were much lower also.
I see. So that's a robust finding, that higher cholesterol, lower infection. If you have low cholesterol, you're more prone to infection.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. See, it's just amazing. Like, I didn't know some of this stuff at all until very recently. So people go their entire lives, even if they're in the research world, and they don't know about some of this stuff.
No. And this is because it's very, very difficult to publish these facts. I have done it, but most doctors, they believe on the professors. Of course, the professor is professor, and he or she knows much more than I do. So they believe on what they are told by the professors.
I mean, we've already talked about a lot. What would be your overall message, or the final thoughts you want to leave people with when it comes to thinking about cholesterol and heart disease and statins and prescription medications? What do you want people to know?
This is the greatest scandal in modern medicine.
This is the greatest scandal in modern medicine.
Yeah, this is.
So because millions and millions of people are on statins, you're saying not only do they not need to be on the statins, hundreds of millions. Yeah, many millions. Yeah. You're saying not only do they not need to be on the statins, but this is actually hurting them.
Yes. I would suggest researchers to try to tell their patients to stop statin treatments and report about the result. Because I'm confident that those who stop statin treatments, they will live longer and they will have a much better life. then then if they continue statin treatment, they will immediately feel benefit.
Well, Professor, I want to thank you for your time and for joining me all the way from Sweden, despite the time zone difference here on the west coast of the US with me. I'm going to link people to the review of yours that I read, which was wonderful. It's called LDL Cholesterol Does Not Cause Cardiovascular Disease. And it was interesting because you not only reviewed the literature, but you sort of reviewed the reviews. You went through all of the other reviews and you picked them apart and you said, look, these people are cherry picking the data, they're doing the analysis wrong, and so on and so forth. And so it really provided a nice window, not just into the biology here, but how the research itself is often biased in its reporting.
I would be very happy if you try to spread this information in many ways.
Oh yeah, we'll do the best we can because I think it is really good work, and I learned a lot from reading it. And the paper is short and sweet, but very, very well done. Thank you very much for your time once again, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you for your interest in this issue.
Visit mindandmatter.substack.com to find all of my content. Hey everyone, I want to take just a minute to tell you about a really cool health monitoring device I've been using called Lumen. It's a handheld, pocket-sized device with a sleek design. The Lumen device measures CO2 levels in your breath, which allows their technology to determine the extent to which your body is burning fats versus carbohydrates. Lumen helps improve your metabolic flexibility, your body's efficiency in shifting between using fats and carbs for energy. I use this device in the morning or before bed or after meals or after workouts to track my metabolism. With just a couple weeks of use, I learned a lot about which foods were causing my body to burn mostly fat, mostly carbs, or both, as well as how long I needed to fast and how hard I needed to exercise to promote fat burning. Being able to track whether your body is burning fat versus carbs will help you figure out how your body responds to your lifestyle and whether or not your weight loss and fitness strategies are actually working. Lumen is great for anyone looking to optimize their health for either weight loss or athletic performance. Their easy-to-use app allows you to track your results together with what you're eating and how you're exercising, and it syncs with other devices like the Apple Watch. Click the link in the episode description to learn more and use the code MINDMATTER, MINDMATTER, to get 10% off your Lumen device today. That's on top of the site-wide sale they are currently running, and the Lumen device is eligible to be paid for with FSA and HSA health accounts. Check out the link in the episode description for more info.